Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's video, we're going to be discussing, should you store your firewood indoors? Alright, so the topic of today's video is going to be, should you store your firewood indoors? Now obviously there's a whole lot of different things to look at and a lot of things to consider, a lot of different situations that could be your case. And we're going to try to go over all of them in today's video. So you decided you want to burn firewood. You have multiple cords of firewood on hand. Should you bring it inside? When should you bring it inside? Is it worth bringing inside? Let's discuss. So the first thing I'm going to say is you should not bring your firewood indoors until it is fully seasoned. I've gone over in multiple other videos what seasoned wood is. If you're not familiar with the term, basically it means 20% or lower moisture content. So there's a number of ways you could check that. You could use a moisture meter, which basically has two metal prongs that you stick into the wood and it'll tell you the moisture content. There's also ways you can tell without gadgets. You can look at the weight of the wood versus when it was freshly cut. The sound of it should sound kind of like a hollow bowling pin. You can look at the coloring of the wood. It should have a nice gray color. It should have a lot of checks and cracks. There's a lot of ways you can tell if the wood's seasoned. And you can also look up charts to tell how long a certain species takes. Some kinds of wood like oak can take 2 or 3 years. Other kinds of wood like ash can season in 6 to 12 months. So it really depends on what type of wood it is, what time of year you cut it down. That can make a big difference in how quickly it seasons. It can also make a huge difference as to where you store the wood. But you absolutely want to store it outside, I would say in a sunny and windy place out in the open for it to fully season before you even consider bringing it indoors. So consider this. A full cord of red oak that's unseasoned could be around 6,000 pounds. By the time it's fully seasoned, it might be more like 4,500 pounds. Let's say you go from 40% moisture content to 15% moisture content. You're losing 25% of the weight. So what's 25% of 6,000? That's 1,500 pounds of water that you're losing in that red oak. That's like 3 55-gallon drums of water you're losing in that red oak over the course of its seasoning in, let's say, 3 years, because oak does take a long time to season. Why would you want to bring 3 55-gallon drums of water into your house? So another huge consideration for me would be, how far is your wood outside from your house? Now, maybe you have a small lot, maybe you only have a half an acre and you have a firewood storage box on your deck or maybe right close to your door outside. Or maybe you have 21 acres like I do and your woodshed is 150 feet or so from your house like mine is. Now that's going to play in a big factor, because if you live in a cold climate like I do here in New England and you get a lot of snow throughout the year, you might have 12 or 18 inches of snow in your yard that you have to try to get through to bring your firewood inside. So where you live as far as climate and how far your wood is from your house is going to make another big difference in whether or not you should consider keeping it indoors. Another huge consideration that I would personally have if I were you is, where is your wood burning appliance in your home? Do you have a stove on your first floor in your main living area? Do you have it in your basement like I do? Because that's going to make a big difference. I'm going to say if you have your stove in your basement, it makes a whole lot more sense to have a lot of wood stored inside once it's seasoned versus if you have it upstairs. If I had my stove on the upstairs main living level, or maybe a fireplace insert type stove, I would probably only have a small amount of wood on hand at a time. I don't want to fill up a bunch of the room with wood. It's going to make a mess. It's going to be heavy. It takes up a lot of volume. So I'd probably have something like a firewood box that holds 1 or 2 days worth of wood at a time near the stove within a few steps. But if you have it in the basement like I do, I think it makes a lot more sense to have a lot of wood in hand. I've had up to about 3 full cords at a time stacked here in my basement. I'll tell you what, it's real nice when it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit outside, middle of the night, windy, and you can just walk down to your basement in your pajamas or your sleeping wear and just load the stove while being comfortable at room temperature, versus having to go outside, walk multiple steps in the freezing cold in the dark, and carry wood in. And carrying wood in every day can get old. Sometimes you end up being busier than other days. Maybe you had to work late, maybe you had after work commitments with your family. Sometimes you just can't bring wood in on a daily basis. So having a lot of wood on hand can be real nice, especially if you have your stove in the basement. Another very real concern of some people might be that you're going to bring bugs or even rodents into your house. So I will tell you, after processing firewood for a number of years, that's a real valid concern. You could bring ants or bees or possibly even termites into your house when you bring firewood into your house. But the reality is, a lot of those bugs like termites can get from firewood to your house without you bringing the wood in your house. They could find other ways in, and it is a concern, but one way to ensure that you do as minimal of this as possible is by having properly seasoned wood. Like I said, a lot of these bugs are gonna like wet, unseasoned wood. So if you let it season outside for a couple of years in a nice sunny spot, a lot of these bugs are either gonna die off, they're gonna leave, they're not gonna stay in the wood. So although it is a real concern, I think if you're bringing only fully seasoned wood into your house, you're gonna minimize the chance of bugs coming in with the wood. So I guess another question you should be asking yourself is, how much wood do you really burn? Now, if you're just burning for ambiance and you're only burning, a few sticks of wood here and there in your fireplace on a nice night after a dinner, maybe watching a movie with your family, something to that effect, and you're only burning maybe half a quart of wood a year, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to store wood in your house because you're only burning a few sticks. So to bring it in from outside every week or two, only a few sticks isn't a big deal. Whereas if you're burning 6, 7, 8 full cords of wood a year, like I do in this large thermal control wood stove that's not overly efficient, and I'm actually heating my house with wood, my oil's not kicking on, that's a lot different than burning it in a fireplace for ambiance. So depending on the volume of wood you burn, the more wood you burn, I think the more sense it makes to store it inside. So another big thing to consider with bringing wood inside versus leaving it outside is it can get really muddy in the winter and spring. Like in Massachusetts here, some Januaries and Februaries, the ground is wet and muddy, and you may have to cross a lot of this area. It might be your yard with a tractor or a truck or a cart or a wheelbarrow, whatever you're using to transport your wood. So there's a good chance that if you leave your wood outside and bring in a little at a time, that you're gonna have to cross muddy, wet areas of your property or maybe your yard, and you could make a mess. So what would my bottom line be? Well, to put it in as simple of terms as I can, I would personally want at least 1 week of wood in my house at a time, or within, a couple of steps distance. So if I can open the door to outside, take 1 or 2 steps on a deck or something and grab the wood, that's close enough. But I would want a 1 week supply of wood on hand. And the reason for that is life can get busy. People have jobs. They might not get home till later. You might have commitments a lot of the nights during the week. It's going to be dark early in the winter time. Maybe it's raining or snowing or frigidly cold. Or maybe you just want to spend time with your family when you get home. You don't want to be bringing wood in there every single night. I would rather spend one Saturday morning or something bringing in wood for 2 or 3 hours, enough for the week, rather than having to do it every single night for 15 or 20 minutes. That's just me. Let me know in the comments what you would rather do. Let me know how much wood you like to bring in at a time and why. Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in seeing more of how I do my firewood, I actually have videos where I showcase me bringing in wood in a multitude of different ways, different tractors, different trailers, and I actually have a video where my entire family brings in firewood with me. If you want to see it, please check out the video on your screen. See you next time.